Welcome back to Face the Nation. We turn now to the latest on the war in the Middle East, where urgency grows to get aid into Gaza. Our Imtiaz Tayyip reports from Tel Aviv, and we want to warn you, some images are disturbing.
High above Gaza, 3 C-130 aircrafts airdropped 38,000 meals in coordination with U.S. ally Jordan. On the ground, and the food parcels landed on the southern end of the besieged Palestinian territory, where around 1.5 million people are sheltering. A minuscule amount of food given the massive need. President Biden made the rare American humanitarian intervention after at least 115 Palestinians were killed and hundreds more wounded when Israeli forces opened fire as thousands had gathered for one of the first food aid deliveries in Gaza City in months. In what Palestinian leaders are calling Israel's flour massacre, people had swarmed the trucks in the desperate hope of getting a sack of flour, only to be killed. The Israeli military continues to insist the deaths were caused by a stampede. But United Nations observers sent to Gaza City's Al-Shifa hospital found the majority of the dead and wounded from the convoy had suffered from bullet and shrapnel wounds. The chaos and carnage only underscores how desperate the situation across Gaza is. Since the start of the war, the Israeli military has blocked most food, water, and medicine into the besieged Palestinian territory, triggering a near famine in the north of Gaza, affecting hundreds of thousands, according to the UN, including 10-year-old Yazan Al-Kafarna. His mother says he has special needs, and getting just the basics, like bananas and eggs, to keep him alive has been impossible. I want the world to understand what we are going through, she says. I want them to help my son. But until Israel agrees to allow for a dramatic increase in aid through the land crossings it controls and distribution challenges are solved, starvation will only spread.
And pressure is only growing to get a ceasefire and hostage release agreement between Israel and Hamas before the start of Ramadan next week. Both sides have signaled they may be close, Margaret. But in the words of a top national security official, until a deal is done, it's not done.
Imtiaz Tayyip reporting from Tel Aviv. And we're joined now here by Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California. Good morning. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Margaret.
I imagine you support the decision to airdrop in aid to Gaza. But this is only happening because an ally of the United States, the largest recipient of U.S. military aid in the world, was not allowing in the aid. And now that it is coming across the border, the distribution is a massive, logistically complicated and unsafe operation. Should there be consequences for standing in the way of U.S. humanitarian aid?
Yes, Margaret, there should. I mean, we should make it clear that we're not going to continue to transfer weapons, as I asked Secretary Austin at the hearing. But Margaret, look.
He didn't answer you.
He did not, but even you could tell from his testimony that he was concerned that we were continuing to transfer aid. Look, we can't transfer weapons. We can't continue to transfer weapons while we're transferring aid. That policy doesn't make sense. Here's the thing. Look, the killing of over 100 Palestinians who are simply going to a food truck to get food, whether by a stampede or by shooting. We don't know all the facts. There should be an investigation. But that has shocked the conscience of the world. And my plea to this president, who I support deeply, is, Mr. President, call for a permanent ceasefire. There's too much suffering and the release of all hostages. The policy of bear-hugging Netanyahu has not worked. Reach out to some of the former Obama officials like Ben Rhodes, Tommy Whiter, who have been saying we need a new direction of policy. We need a permanent ceasefire, release of hostages. We need to call for a Palestinian state, a summit with our Gulf allies. The current policy is not working.
Do you believe, truly, in an election year, that the President of the United States could be that head-on direct in criticizing the Prime Minister of Israel?
Yes. You know who was? President Obama.
Yes.
And he won 2 terms. And, you know, Ben Rhodes...
Mr. Biden didn't agree with when he was vice president.
Look, Ben Rhodes, actually, he texted me this picture of Wisconsin in 2012 with 2 days before the election. And they were a sea of young people out there, hundreds of thousands of young people. We need that base. I don't think in the head-to-head polling this is the issue that is showing up. But I'll tell you, this is an issue for activists. This is an issue for organizers. This is an issue for young folks. And this is going to be a turnout election. And right now, they want a new moral direction for our nation and for what's going on. Everyone agrees Hamas is a terrorist organization. What they did on October 7th is brutal. It should be condemned unequivocally. But the point is now it's time to get a permanent ceasefire and a release of the hostages. And the president can do it. With one call, he can do it.
Well, that we'll see. But on what you just went to from policy to politics, you are a Biden campaign surrogate.
Proudly.
Proudly, you say. In announcing the airdrops, I want to play this soundbite for you because this is what President Biden said.
In the coming days, we're going to join with our friends in Jordan and others in providing airdrops of additional food and supplies into Ukraine, and seek to continue to open up other avenues into Ukraine, including the possibility of a Marine corridor to deliver large amounts of humanitarian assistance.
This was a big decision. This was a big announcement. And the President of the United States twice got confused as to the country and place where the aid was being dropped. He said Ukraine twice.
He
Doesn't that
misspoke.
concern you?
I just misspoke earlier when I said we need to stop transferring weapons. I said aid. I mean, people misspeak on television.
This was the announcement of a major policy change.
Here's the thing. I have been very direct in criticizing the president's policy in the Middle East. I have spoken with the president. He is fully coherent. He is on top of details. When I have talked to him just a couple of weeks ago, my view is let's focus on policy. Let's focus on saving lives. And he'll have the opportunity to make the case about his aid to the American people. But I have confidence in that part of it. I believe what he needs to do is to stop the killing, the suffering.
Yeah. But you are also talking about young voters and progressive voters, and they see that. On the issue of the policy, in Michigan, we saw these two efforts to essentially protest against Joe Biden by coming out and voting uncommitted. In Minnesota, another Super Tuesday state, there's a similar campaign underway. Are we going to see something like that in California as well?
There are efforts on uncommitted in California, a number of other Super Tuesday states, and in Wisconsin.
Significant?
It's significant. I don't think, look, the president's winning overwhelmingly, and I don't in the primaries, and I don't think this is going to affect his vote total, but it is going to affect his turnout and base. But Margaret, this is not just a political issue. This is a humanitarian catastrophe. Secretary Austin said over 25,000 dead. Our weapons are going there. There's starvation that's taking place. There are reports that 58,000 more Palestinian dead within 6 months if we don't have a ceasefire. The president can get this done. The disagreement is Hamas wants a 4.5-month wait. Bibi Netanyahu doesn't want to have that long a ceasefire. Have the president in there, get it done, become a peacemaker, recognize a Palestinian state, a two-state solution. And I think he can, and I think he can win back young people.
But just on the policy point, there aren't new authorities the president would need to halt those arms shipments. He has those authorities. He's choosing not to use them.
He has it, and he could call for a ceasefire. He can stop protecting them at the UN. There are a lot of levers. And I'm hoping after this morning he'll move in the direction of taking a new approach.
Well, I point this out because also back to the cynical politics of this, in our polling, we see nearly twice as many Democrats rate Biden's presidency fair or poor compared with Republicans who say the same about Trump. The president is having a problem with his base.
And that's why I think he needs to do something bold.
This is a problem.
This is a problem. But if he can turn it around, not just by calling for a ceasefire, if he becomes the first American president to convene Gulf allies, to convene Israel, to convene municipal leaders in Palestine and civic society and said, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to recognize a Palestinian state. I'm going to have a two-state solution. And I'm going to recognize that the security of Israel matters, but the end of occupation matters. He can become a hero. And this is... Look, the president has had an amazing public service career. My plea to him, forget electoral politics. Do this for people in the Middle East. It'll be a capstone to his legacy. I hope he'll meet with some of the progressive members of Congress to make that case to him.
Ro Khanna, good to have you here in studio.
Thank you,
Congressman. We'll be right back. We turn now to Republican Senator Dan Sullivan of Alaska. Good morning and good to have you here in studio.
Good morning, Margaret. Good to be here. Thanks.
You have said the U.S. is in the midst of one of the most dangerous times since World War II. We just heard from the House Intelligence Committee chairman saying it is imperative to get this aid to Ukraine. They run out of ammunition soon.
Yeah.
Are you confident Republicans can deliver this?
Well, look, I voted for the supplemental, and I voted for the national security supplemental. And I did for a couple of reasons. The first one is what you just said, Margaret, which is this is a new era of authoritarian aggression. We got the dictators all around the world, Xi Jinping, Putin, Iran, the Ayatollahs in Iran, North Korea. They are working together. We need a strategic response to that at the very dangerous time. Second, the Biden administration, with regard to national security, has not been serious. They cut the defense budget every year, inflation-adjusted cuts. By the way, Secretary didn't mention it. They cut Homeland Security every year, too. Those are the two areas this administration consistently cuts, weakens our Homeland Security, weakens our defense. But this aid should be much more, in terms of how we talk about it, in terms of the supplemental. It's less a foreign aid package and more a package about rebuilding our own industrial capacity to build weapons for ourselves.
Mitch McConnell talks about that, but it's your fellow Republicans in the House who seem skeptical because the Democratic votes are there.
Part of the reason I'm on your show today is to talk about it, because 60% of this supplemental, and look, it's not a perfect bill. The House can make it better. 60% goes into our ability to build weapons for America. Everything from nuclear subs. By the way, almost 40% of our attack subs are in maintenance right now. We don't have the industrial capacity to protect ourselves. Xi Jinping is scared to death of American subs. This supplemental unlocks $6 billion for our sub capacity to build subs, $5 billion to produce 155 millimeter howitzer rounds, and everything in between, javelins, stingers, tomahawks. So this is about our industrial capacity to protect America first. And then, of course, we need to get some of these weapons to our allies who are facing existential threats, whether it's Taiwan, Israel, and Ukraine. And I think when you talk about it from that perspective, it should unite Republicans, not divide them.
I imagine it would help if Donald Trump endorsed this package. He hasn't done it. Here's what he said last night at a rally in Richmond about Vladimir Putin.
Putin, has so little respect for Obama that he's starting to throw around the nuclear word today. You heard that, nuclear. He's starting to talk nuclear weapons today. I was waiting for that to happen, but we have a fool as a president. He said, we will never leave until there is complete and total victory. We might be there for a long time.
I know you have endorsed Mr. Trump. He seemed there to confuse Biden for Obama. He also suggested that there were U.S. troops serving in Ukraine. Are you comfortable about his mental fitness?
Yes. Compared to the current president, 110%. And as your polling shows, I think the American people have real concerns where President Biden is with regard to his fitness for office, particularly his mental acuity, and relative to President Biden, or relative to former President Trump. I don't even think it's a close call when you see the two in action.
But to be clear, there are no U.S. troops serving on the battlefield in Ukraine. There are military advisors. There aren't troops, correct?
No, but the other thing that...
Okay, because some within your party believe that. And that was what he suggested there.
I would go back to who is demonstrating more mental fitness to be the president, and I don't even think it's a close call between President Trump and President Biden right now.
You recently retired after 30 years in the Marine Corps.
I did.
Jim Mattis, you know him well.
I do.
Retired and revered general, wrote in his resignation letter from the Trump administration he had to leave because of a difference of views on treating allies with respect and being clear-eyed about competitors.
Yeah.
John Kelly, also retired Marine Corps general who served with Mr. Trump, described him as a person that has no idea what America stands for, has no idea what America is all about, a person who admires autocrats and murderous dictators. That's a stunning assessment from two people who served alongside him as to the values of Donald Trump. Why do you think he represents your vision for America?
Well, I think one of the things, and look, I respect General Kelly and Secretary Mattis tremendously. I think the key, though, Margaret, is to look at the record. and the record of what the Trump administration, working with Republicans, did in terms of foreign policy was dramatically stronger and focused on our allies than certainly the Obama administration, the Obama-Biden administration. And let me just give you a couple examples.
You remember why Mattis resigned?
Oh, I do remember why
Mattis
resigned. I mean, I'll give you an example. In terms of Russia, particularly, you remember President Biden, the Biden, Obama-Biden administration was providing them MREs after the invasion of Crimea. What did the Trump administration with Republican support do? We got them javelins. We significantly bolstered American troop presence in the Baltics and in Poland, which the Obama administration refused to do. We dramatically increased American defense spending. The second term of the Obama administration, Obama-Biden, cut defense spending by 25%. They wrecked readiness. I'm the ranking member on the Readiness Subcommittee on Armed Services. Trump and the Republican Senate, we brought military readiness back, and we unleashed another element of American power, and that's American energy. So these are all strong elements of the Trump administration record working with Republicans that made us stronger. And right now, if you look around the world, you see chaos, and a lot of that, in my view, has been driven by the Biden administration's weakness.
I have to leave it here because we are out of time. Senator, good to have you here.
Margaret, good to be here. Thanks.
We'll be back in a moment. Excuse me. Our CBS News poll also found that crime and gun policy were among the top issues for voters in 2024. On Friday, we toured the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms here in Washington. Although violent crime is down across the country, ATF Director Steven Dettelbach says the agency is trying to do more to reduce gun violence.
I think it's fair to say that for the agency that is the only federal law enforcement agency that solely deals with violent crime, if you're really concerned about violent crime in the United States, this agency is way, way, way too small.
5,000 people.
5,000 people total, 2,500 agents. Let me give you a sort of a baseline. In one city, New York City, there are 36,000 police officers, right? 17 times the entire ATF agent corps for the entire country. I mean, if there's no such thing as public safety on the cheap, you know, we have to support the police and we have to support the federal agents that are out there risking their lives every day.
Is there a way to use what you have now in a sharper way, in a more targeted way?
We have to do that, right? That's the name of the question that I have every day.
What do you need?
If we don't get any more resources, the president's asked for more, if we don't, what we are doing to try and sharpen, we use what's called crime gun intelligence, which is a fancy term, but basically it applies to being able to follow the gun. So a crime gun, which is something that's involved with the crime, and squeeze every last bit of evidence and intel we can out of the thing that comes out the front of the gun, the bullet, the cartridge casing that's ejected out the back of the gun, the outside of the gun, things like the serial number, and the inside of the gun, the markings inside of the gun.
The ATF is prohibited by law from creating a centralized database of registered gun owners. How big of an impediment is that to actually stopping gun traffickers?
This happened in Highland Park in the July 4th massacre, right? Firearm, serial numbers put in. We run an urgent trace and get back to the police in just a matter of hours the identity of the person who purchased that firearm. They catch the person before they kill again, okay? How does that really happen in real life? The way it doesn't happen is we punch in a person's name and up comes, oh, they own so many guns. Congress has prohibited us from doing that. We pay somebody to take out search function in order to comply with the congressional notion that there can't be a gun registry, the law that there can't be a gun registry in the United States. It's not a notion, it's a law, and we comply with it. That means that we have to work within that system.
Last week, the Supreme Court heard arguments over bump stocks, devices that effectively turn semi-automatic rifles into machine guns, and the question of whether a Trump administration ban was lawfully implemented by the ATF.
This debate that we heard is about more than bump stocks. It's about all these different products which are being used to turn semi-automatic weapons into machine guns. And if you had asked most police chiefs or most agents who are running towards this gunfire. It's a very dangerous situation for them too. Whether 10 years ago they thought this was even a possibility, 15 years ago they'd have said no. Machine guns went the way of Al Capone and the Tommy gun. Unfortunately, technology can be used for good and technology can be used for bad, right? And what I want people to understand is we at ATF are doing everything we can within the law to try and protect them under the laws we have from these unlawful machine guns. Now, if somebody wants to pass additional laws, we'll take those.
For a lot of people at home, they are horrified when it comes to their own children. Whatever their view on guns are, they want their kids to be safe. How do Americans protect their children against gun violence in this environment?
Well, I'm a parent. We were talking about that, and I've raised 2 children, and I think about this too. I think the temperature on this issue is way, way, way too high. And I understand why it is, because as you say, this is our kids, right? The leading cause of death of children in the United States is firearms violence, right? Not cancer, not cars, guns.
This is kids and teenagers.
On the other hand, people have very passionate feelings about their Second Amendment rights, right? I sat in a room in Lewiston, Maine last week with families and survivors of the mass shooting that happened in Lewiston a couple months ago. And there were people in that room, first of all, tremendous grief, unspeakable frustration and anger. There were people in that room who had really different views on these sort of policy questions, right? Everything from how can somebody get a weapon like this in this country to you know, but I really value my weapons in the same room. Weeks after they've lost a brother or a father or been shot themselves, right? Those people were able to sit in that room with all that grief and have a discussion. If those people in that grief can disagree with each other but still sit and have a conversation in a civilized way, what is the excuse for the other 350 million of us not to be able to do that? We owe it to those people to try to get what we can agree on done.
And you can see more of that interview on YouTube. We'll see you next week.